The only reason that Tigers didn't win that game is they lacked the finesse. They got over the line, but they lacked the finesse. I'm really pleased for them that they got the 2 points.
Sure.
But I've got to say, Marty, there seemed to be something lacking. The Tigers were able to pick them apart down the middle of the ruck time and time again. That penalty kick, under a lot of pressure, that was a really good kick, and it showed a lot, I think, for the future.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
4 rounds gone in the NRL. Then our good old mate, the legend that is Sir Graham Lowe, the only Kiwi that's ever coached in Origin, Queensland. He, of course, coached Manly as well up the Northern Hemisphere. He's a great old mate. Welcome back to the show as we talk about where the Warriors are at. Are you happy with a 3-1 start?
Oh, I think you've got to be happy with that, Marty. It's a good start. Could have quite easily, when you've only won a couple, that one you missed out is pretty painful. And while it wasn't, I don't think it was convincing on Sunday. It was a win, and that's all that was required.
Look, you could say that probably of the last couple, Roosters and Tigers, in both matches behind and came back. And I think that's a key, isn't it? Because at the end of the season, it's not the 30 or 40 point blowout wins if we achieve a couple of those. It's these kind of grinding results that are the ones that get you into that 8.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to paint a nice picture at the end of the season. You just got to have the right numbers there. And I was a bit concerned there for a while because, in fairness and in actual fact, I think in many ways the Tigers outplayed the Warriors. I know the commentators gave them plenty of raps and things like that, and back in the studio everyone loves them, but the Tigers got over. I mean, they lacked the finesse to score 3 tries. They were over the line 3 times and didn't score, and that's got to be a little bit of a concern. And particularly when you take into account that just before the game they lost one of their key players in the warm-up. There was a lot of things against the Tigers, but at the end of the day, none of that counts. It just matters who gets the 2 points. But there would be a concern, I'm sure, with Andrew Webster when he has a look at the videos and he looks how they were picked apart a few times when they shouldn't have been picked apart in defence. It's got to be a little bit of a worry.
Very perceptive view as always, mate, because Webby did say that in his post-match presser. He said, hey, look, we did some things okay, we did some things really poorly. I'll take, what we did do well, and I'll look at that. And, this is part of the frustration of being on this side of the microphone, wanting to talk about this club, is actually trying to find anyone that isn't in that flowery rose petal, all I am is here to cheerlead, and and no disrespect to those during the Sky Sport presentation, but that's all you get from them. They're kind of like a promotional vehicle for the club. So, I just want to break it down and actually be realistic about it. And that doesn't mean overly criticising, but it means when the team hasn't played well, you've got to sort of look at, okay, what areas were good, what areas weren't. So if you had to pick a couple out of each, let's start with what you liked about that performance.
Well, I think that the thing to like about it is they were able to come back. And that's a big mark in a team, and that's a big mark in a good team. They were able to come back, and there was some individual efforts that the team actually needed. They worked to a certain level as a team, but you still require those individual efforts to actually win the game, and they showed that. And also, that penalty kick, under a lot of pressure, that was a really good kick, and it showed a lot, I think, for the future. But in actual fact, they were outplayed in many parts of the game. And as I said, 3 times, it might have even been 4, I can't recall now, but 3 times, the only reason that the Tigers didn't win that game is they lacked the finesse. They got over the line, but they lacked the finesse. They broke the Warriors apart when they needed to, but they lacked the finesse to score the tries.
You can go back to the Roosters game, and there were 2 or 3 occasions. There was a couple of just crazy bounces of the ball in that game, which is, and tries were butchered as a result of it. There's also one, I think, in the second half with a 2 or 3 on one overlap, and the pass went over the sideline. So it's concurrent games this has happened. But both of those games, as we said right at the start, 2 points gained. So that's the real positive about it. But what are you wanting to fix immediately? Like, there's a bye week now, so this gives a lot of time to think about it before the Melbourne Storm. What would you want to fix with the Warriors?
Well, I think one of the things that they've got to be looking at closely is, have they actually got the right side out there? and they'll probably say they have, but I just look back to the trials, the pre-season, and that Joey Lussick in the pre-season, he was a standout player by far. And I haven't seen it, so I don't know if he's injured or whatever, but he adds a level of excitement and thrust around that ruck area that I know Wade Egan's a good player and he's a steady player, whatnot, but I think Lussick offers something extra again. And in these early games, especially when they've been able to pick up points, is a time to could change the whole dynamic of the team by have they got the right lineup? Might sound like a silly question, but you have to make sure. It's easier to fall in love with the players when you coach. Players do things for you, and you fall in love with them. You think, "Oh, well done," and you just put them in the next week without you sometimes forget what you've got sitting in the background that could actually give you more firepower than what you're playing with at the moment.
Lowe, do you change your winning side? What was your coaching philosophy around that? If a team's winning, doesn't matter how they're winning, do you keep those players or do you look more holistically at it?
I think the players expect you to keep the side as steady as it can be. And I used to try and go by every now and then a player would piss me off, and doesn't matter what happened, I'd kick him out. Sorry, my language then, but
That's right, bud.
I'd move him. I'd sort of put him aside. But I think there's you try and keep that winning combination, because it's the combinations that eventually start gelling more and more and more with the games as they go on. But there just seemed to be something lacking with
Right.
I'm really pleased for them that they got the 2 points.
Sure.
But I've got to say, Marty, there seemed to be something lacking. The Tigers were able to pick them apart down the middle of the ruck time and time and time again, the Tigers definitely didn't have their best side out playing for injuries was the main reason, but that Lowe, he was just a handful for them, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to learn a lot from this Storm game, despite the fact that they just lost to St. George. I mean, the worst time to play them is, of course, after they have a loss like that. They've got this weekend to obviously rewrite that, but they'll still be smarting in a couple of weeks' time. In terms of the halves at the moment, are you happy with Metcalf at 6? Are you happy with the CHT being in there as well? And Metcalf, certainly in terms of that goal kicking, is a real asset right now, isn't he? Because, Metcalf's at 7, sorry. So, yeah just... that sideline conversion for a start, I mean, that, was a hell of a kick. And then the 40-metre into the wind one as well, given the woes that he had against Canberra and Vegas. So, sorry, I got those round the wrong way. So him at halfback and CHT there, are you happy with that halves combo?
I think that I like Metcalf as a player. I think he's a good. He's only going to improve. He's got some class and style about him, and I think he's only going to improve. And I think the halves, are going quite well. I think that they will have to work on their penetration, because there doesn't seem to be, for me, there doesn't really seem to be enough variation in attack. There's too much one-out stuff and no one backing any players up. That to me is a standout issue that they need to address. But to answer your question, I think the halves are going okay.
In terms of replacing Tohu, Dylan Walker stepped in. He's gone now. Who do you think at number 13 is the guy that they want to be cement in that position?
I think they've got a few options there. I haven't really made my mind up. As I said, Marty, I saw players. I can't recall all their names now, but I saw players in their pre-season. I thought, wow, I hope these blokes get a chance soon, because otherwise they just fade away. But Harris was always going to be. He's the player that they really missed from last year, I think. In many ways, he was such a good player for them, week in, week out, steady, reliable, tough. I think they are missing him, and it's evident a few times around the ruck when they just got beaten close, particularly close to the line, when the Tigers were basically able to take a cup of tea through the breaks. They were so wide. That should just never happen. And when Harris was playing, that didn't happen.
So the start of the season is pretty much a mirror of what happened a couple of years ago when 16 games were won. We went 4-1 at that stage. We're 3-1 now. We get a bye, so we get 8 points after 5 rounds, which is a hell of a start. So despite the fact the team's not clicking at absolute top gear, this is where you really want to be, because if you drop in those games, as soon as you fall below the 500 and you're playing chase, it's just such an impossible competition, isn't it? So it's a really good time, I think, to actually have a week off, isn't it, and be able to settle it down and go, okay, celebrate all 3 wins in a row. Anytime you get 3 wins in a row in this competition, you got to pat yourselves on the back. But at the same time, there are plenty of what we'd call work-ons. That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think they should celebrate, where they are at the moment, because it's just. I think it's fantastic where they're at. You certainly couldn't pick a winner at this stage of the season, because there's a lot in that hodgepodge sort of 6 points area.
Yep.
But they will have a lot to work on. They will, and it's a time for honesty. And as I said, coaches, I've been there and I've done it myself. I know what it's like. You fall in love with players.
You've always said, though, Lowe, sorry to interrupt you. You've always said, though, you said you can love your players, but you can't be in love with them. I remember you telling me that a couple of years ago. It's always stuck with me.
Yeah, well, that's right. You love your players, but because it's such a hard game, you'll often see a player and you're right up close, and you actually see him just minutes before the game and straight after the game and during the game at halftime, and you see and know the effort that player has done for you, and your heart goes out to them. You've got to try and somehow distance yourself from that feeling at times and think, is he the best for the job? So it's quite easy to fall in love with a player. So I think with a few cases that's an area they've got to be careful of at the moment. But this having the bye now and having a bit of a relax and put the feet up and celebrate the success they've had, it'll allow them time to, I think, have a good clear look when they're not under pressure. They're not under pressure at all now. They've got to just have a clear look. What is the best now for the best chunk of our games going through? I mean, they're gonna be in an advantage when the State of Origin comes, because they don't lose too many players in State of Origin.
No.
So that's time for them to pick up points as well.
In terms of the young players, a couple more questions, I'll let you go. In terms of the young players, we just saw a fantastic try from 70 metres out. What do you do with a player like that who's 19 years old? Do you throw him in straight away, or do you just go, okay, I'm going to just prick the balloon a little bit here, give him another couple of games in reserve grade or something like that, or do you just reward him for that effort on that, scoring that try? How do you deal with the young guys?
They're all different. They're all different. It's to do with their size and their capability of withstanding the rigours of playing the 80 minutes of football week in, week out.
19's young. 19's a young man, mate.
It's a very young man. But there are some players that can do it. And I mean, look at the 19-year-olds that were in the West Tigers team. There was a few of them in that side there as well. And the young players, some can do it. It's the physical. It's like running with the ball and being hit with a blinking two-door fridge every 30 or 40 seconds. Having one of those dropped on your head. That's what the game's like. It's real. It's real tough, and the maturity. Some 19-year-olds are more mature than other 19-year-olds, but I've always believed if they show a sign that they've got it and they look like they can handle it, you've got to put them in.
Great way to start the season, though, isn't it, eh? And again, I love your honesty as well, mate, because that's what this is about. It's not about just sitting there and sugarcoating everything. We've got to be absolutely brutally honest with this, because that's what this competition does to you. And it's incredible, as you say, one unbeaten team after 4 rounds, and that's the Doggies of 4-0. No one else is unbeaten. Penrith have lost 3 in a row. Go figure that. Who would have thought that? But that's what this competition is about. So you have to actually be very truthful the way you assess, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, you've got to be brutal with yourself as much as anything, and there's a couple of really good things going for the Warriors, not the least being their fans. I mean, their fans'
Totally.
support is just incredible. It's the only time I've seen fans similar to what the Warriors have got was at Wigan. Wigan has fantastic fans. It's just unbelievable. You get thousands there watching your training, and but the Warriors fans, I think, are absolutely fantastic, and they're a pretty wise bunch as well. They know their footy. They know their footy, and they know their teams might be on the verge of something really good at the moment, and they're just trying to keep it all together. But in the background, in the dressing rooms, the coaches have got the difficult job because they have to be brutally honest with themselves and with what they're seeing, and not fall in love with any players and make sure they put the best team out there week in, week out.
This is the DSPN.